engineering program, most of the courses will have examinations, which can be in the mode of the progress test or final examinations. Most of these examinations do not allow the students to bring in any references, and because of that, the students will have to prepare well before entering the exam hall. Sometimes there are open book examinations. Under these circumstances, certain approved materials may be brought into the exam hall, and the students may refer accordingly while answering the exam questions. The approved materials can vary significantly depending on the situations. Some only allows the relevant standards, such as Eurocode, PAM contract, Malaysian standards, British standards, and etc. Sometimes class notes, textbooks, and other materials may be allowed. There are two modes of open book examinations. One is restricted, another one is unrestricted. The restricted open book examinations have some restrictions in terms of the materials that may be referred by the students while answering the exam questions. Only certain types of materials are allowed, such as the formula sheets, tables, or limited numbers of texts. While conducting these restricted open book examinations, it can be easily complemented when the exam hall or exam venue is provided, in order to prevent the students to bring into other unauthorized materials. Normally, the exam unit will provide each student one set of all the necessary materials. Most of the engineering students are familiar with this. For example, reinforced concrete designs. Normally, Eurocode 2 will be provided. For structural steel design, Eurocode 3 shall be provided. For contracts and law, PAN contracts are normally provided. Those are standards or guidelines that the students can base on when answering their final exam questions. Now, why do we need to provide those materials? First, this is to simulate the applications in the industry. While designing for the structure or while handling with the project, the relevant materials are always accessible by the engineers. And when come to the assessment, those materials serve as the guideline to the students. Out of so many informations provided to the students, the students will have to be able to utilize those materials creatively, meeting all the relevant requirements. Sometimes a lot of equations are involved. Our focus now is for them to have the ability to apply those equations. Since there are so many of them, normally we do not request the students to memorize all the equations. Sometimes there are a series of tables, for example normal distributions tables, which are used to determine the probability while doing the mathematics. It is nearly impossible for the students to memorize everything. So when the materials are restricted, we have better control over the materials that can be referred by the students. This prevents the cases of cheating, which at the same time will provide sufficient information to the students while assessing the level of understanding beyond the materials given. Another mode is unrestricted mode. In this case, any materials at any quantities is allowed. Since there are no restriction, the students can bring in anything. The students may also refer to whichever materials that they have in order to answer the questions. This can be done in the exam venue as provided by the university. It may also be conducted as a take-home exam, especially for the take-home exam. it is very hard for us to control the materials that the students can refer. In this case, we can allow the students to refer to any materials that they have. Just that when you need to set your exam questions, you need to make sure those exam questions are original, where the students cannot literally acquire the answers from any other sources of materials in order to test their understandings of the concepts and principles taught through the courses. As for the final examinations, if open book examinations is conducted, normally we will go for the restricted open book examinations. It is easier to control. As for unrestricted open book examinations, we can use it as a formative assessment, such as progress tests. Now, the open book examinations test the students' ability to quickly find relevant information, understand, analyze, apply knowledge, and think critically, diagnose and solve complex problems, and deliver well-structured and well-presented argument and solutions. These are the characteristics of an open book examinations. This also establishes the reason why you need to have open book examinations. I would say that if any examination which you intend to make it open book, you will have to make sure all these are available, especially the critical thinking part. And when it comes to this kind of assessment, normally we will go for really high levels of thinking orders, such as C5 and C6. Normally we do not encourage to have open book examinations for the assessment of C1 to C3, as the relevant information can easily be found from the references, and students can give the answer by copying the information from the references without fully understanding it. And this defeats the purpose of testing the level of understanding, unless you want to test the ability of the students to quickly find the relevant information only. And then when you design this kind of questions, make sure the problems are complex, unique, where you cannot find direct answers from any references. The students will have to go through a process of diagnosing the problem, synthesizing the knowledge available, incorporate with critical thinkings, so that they have decisions and personal inputs over solving those complex problems. And the relevant informations must not be only found in one places of one reference materials. You will require the students to synthesize, to get information from various sources of materials, integrate them together, and come up with one final solutions. And that is the purpose of open book examinations. I observe many universities are also conducting the open book examinations. Many are doing it right, especially for the final examinations. Somehow, I did observe some lecturers have some misconceptions about final examination, probably because lacking of understanding about the functions and the purpose of the open book examination. Now, let us talk about the misconceptions of open book examinations. You need to be aware of all these misconceptions before deciding for the open book examinations. First, open book exams are easy. This is incorrect. Most of the students think open book exam is easy. Also, some lecturers also feel so, but this is actually not correct. That means something is wrong with that open book examination. First, you will have to design the open book examinations in the manner that answering the questions require more than just copying information straight from the text. Sometimes we see the mistakes by the lecturer here. If the students can copy straight the informations, might as well we just make it typical examinations instead of open book examinations. At least what we can secure is the C1 and C2. Let's say now the students are given marks by copying the information straight from the text. Now I'm not sure whether it makes the C1. Remember what is C1? Remembering or recalling without understanding. Now when the students can copy the informations and get the answers right, students do not need to remember. Now is it C1? This is something questionable. Some may argue that when the students choose to copy certain informations, that means they have certain degree of understanding. Is it true? Can the students copy the entire pages or entire passage, even though there are irrelevant parts? And when you mark the papers, those irrelevant parts will not be given marks, of course. Then you will find those relevant parts and marks shall be awarded. There are no penalties to the students for not having the ability to differentiate which is relevant and which is irrelevant. So in this case, you cannot totally eliminate the students who have no understanding and yet have the ability to copy the informations from their references. So in this case, if your open book exam only require the students to copy the informations, and with that the students are given marks to score the questions entirely, this defeats the purpose of having the open book examinations. So by right, open book examination shouldn't be too easy. When the students are allowed to refer to the informations, that means the focus of the assessment is not about the information. It is definitely beyond the informations available in the references. Now what will be the focus? Our focus are normally with the in-depth diagnosis of the problem, the critical interpretations of the knowledge, careful justifications of the solutions, and so on so forth. That means we are testing the reasonings, critical thinkings, analytical skills, and so on so forth. The informations available in the references will be the support, helping the students to realize those critical thinking skills. Next, misconception. The students do not have to study. This is not true. The time spent in studying the relevant course, it shall be at least equivalent. If not, it's going to be more. Why is it so? Because now when come to the open book examination, the focus are always beyond the informations available from the references. Understanding the informations, memorizing the informations is one thing. And you need to know why open book examinations are conducted. It is when the informations can be coming from various sources. Certain concepts and principles can be formulated from various perspectives. And there are tons of informations to be memorized by the students beyond the manageable levels. Because of this, those informations are provided. Now when you need to study those, you will spend more or less the same amount of time studying and understanding, and you will need more time to practice the critical thinking parts, plus planning and strategizing the materials to be brought into the exam hall. Why is this part important? Because the durations given for the examinations is limited. The papers is designed with an equivalent time that you spend to complete the entire paper. There won't be much time for you to searching and thinking for the suitable materials and informations. you have to be very well versed of where you can get those informations, which materials that you need to refer, which clauses, and so on and so forth. You must be very familiar with the materials before entering the final examinations. Not only that, you will have to plan and strategize how the materials are being brought into the exam hall. It is not as many materials as you brought that help you to score well. It is how effective you can find the materials during the exam, helping you to access the relevant informations so that you can proceed from there on for the critical thinking part. So with that, normally you will have to spend more time studying the course for you to pass with flying colors. The next misconception: students can copy straight from the book. This is not true. As we have mentioned, when open book examinations is conducted, that means it shall involve synthesizing of different knowledge and principles. Copying the text will only provide you the basic marks designated for the right information. But what is the following? It will be the reasoning, justifications, critical interpretations, creative solutions, and all those will carry a bigger portions of the mark. And if the students rely solely on copying the informations from the references, most likely students will only be able to acquire 1/3 of the mark available for that particular paper, the most. Next misconception: the more material the better. This is also not true. When you have too much materials and sources that you bring into the exam hall, it might end up to be very time consuming, distracting, and crowding the workplace. This will significantly affect the efficiency of your work and may also affect your performance during the examinations. It also creates psychological pressure when you realize that you spend too much time searching for certain information. In this case, it is better for you to properly plan and strategize the materials to be brought into the exam hall, especially when it comes to the unrestricted mode of open book examination. You can actually custom make your materials, make it well organized, make it concise summary, make it systematic, and make it a well-planned traceable system, eliminate the redundancies, helping you to quickly access for the necessary informations so that you can answer the questions without wasting much time, because you will need to save the relevant times for what is the following, which is the critical thinkings, and so on and so forth. Another misconception: marking open book exam is simple. This is also not true. The open book examinations are normally open-ended in nature. What does it mean by open-ended? That means there is no standard answers from the students. Different students will have their unique ways to answer. The solutions may be different. Now, if you notice that after the open book examinations, all the students come up with similar answer, that means something is wrong with your open book examination. Why is it so? It is because it ultimately becomes a closed-ended nature. You may need to review how you set the questions, or you might need to train the students for the critical thinking parts. Most likely the students are lacking those. One more thing about marking the open book exam papers is that you should use marking scheme instead of the model answer. Marking scheme tells you how you do the marking. Model answer tells you what are the standard answers. Since now your exam are more towards the open-ended, you can have model answer But you will need to allow some degree of flexibility in terms of the marking. Personally, I feel marking scheme it will be more appropriate as it identifies the criteria and requirements how the marks should be awarded. Now, answering to the marking of the open-ended exam, is it going to be easy? Most likely not, because there will be a variety of answers given by the students. There are a lot of decisions that you need to make while marking for the paper. Not only a wide variety in terms of the solutions given by the students, sometimes you may also encounter problems that students do not have adequate writing skills, or students have poor ability to organize the informations in the sensible manner. You will need to read between the lines to really find the levels of understanding of the students based on what is written by the students. You cannot simply penalize the students for the poor writing skills, as the ultimate purpose of conducting the assessment is to test the level of understanding of the students. Now, after we have gone through all these misconceptions of the open book examinations, you realize that the open book examinations is not as easy as you think. If it is easy, there is no need for the open book examination. You also realize that since the informations are really given to the students, the ultimate focus will not be on the informations alone. The informations will serve as the basic and the fundamentals, which what is more important, it will be the following part. This will require a lot of in-depth analysis and diagnosing of the problem, critical interpretations of the knowledge, creative usage of the concept and the principles, having the ability to synthesize and integrate those informations, having the ability to make right decisions in justifiable manners, having the ability to develop solutions which are unique, specifically designed for certain particular problems, and all this cannot be fully accomplished by literally copy from the references. Now let us talk about the practical side. What kind of courses will require open book examinations? I would say normally fundamental courses such as mechanics, mathematics, and some fundamental theoretical courses. Normally we do not require the open book examination. There are more suitable mode of assessment. It is only when we require higher thinking orders, and that will be something that critical for the students to function as a qualified engineers, and also those problems which are practical, more closely resemble the reality, which are complex in the nature, where you cannot get straight answer from the references and involve a lot of professional judgment, then these are the courses that require open book examinations. Now, when do you encounter this kind of courses? Normally, you see this kind of courses in the third year and the final years, especially when there are so many equations or informations to be remembered beyond the manageable levels of a typical students. And normally those informations are not the main focus of the assessment. Then open book examination shall be relevant. This brings to the next point, that deciding whether open book examinations is to be conducted is an objective decision. It is not the matter of preferences of the lecturer. You will really need to know the nature of your course and the focus of the assessment for you to decide whether open book examination shall be conducted. You cannot simply say that I prefer open book examinations, then that should be it. You really need to justify the necessity of open book examination. And then whoever conduct the open book examinations you really need to know the main functions and the purpose of the open book examination. It is only the open book examinations is properly designed, then your assessment shall closely reflect the actual situation. Otherwise, it will bring you inaccurate data, and this is going to affect the performance of a program as a whole under the context of outcome-based education.